Okay, welcome members to today's special council meeting. As per usual, I'm going to pass the now John to take us through. John.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, members. To all members of Derry City and Strabane District Council, you're hereby summoned to attend a special meeting of the council to be held remotely via WebEx today, Tuesday, the 15th of March at 4 o'clock. Starting with the roll call, Alderman Breslin. Alderman Devaney.
Here, John.
Alderman Guy. Alderman Hussey.
Online.
Alderman Carrigan. Alderman McClintock.
Here, John.
Alderman McCready. Alderman Ramsey. Alderman Wark.
Here, John.
Councillor Jason Barr. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Here, John.
Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Michaela Boyle. Councillor Carr.
Here, John.
Councillor Cusick. Councillor Dobbins. Councillor Donnelly.
Shaw.
Councillor Doyle.
Here.
Councillor Duffy.
And Shaw.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Ferguson.
Here, John.
Councillor Fleming.
Shaw, John.
Councillor Gallagher.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Harkin.
Here.
Councillor Heaney.
Shaw.
Councillor Jackson.
Shaw.
Councillor Kelly.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Logue.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor McGinley.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor McGowan. Councillor McGuire. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McKeever. Councillor McKinney.
Here, John. Here, John.
Councillor Mooney.
Here, John.
Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Riley.
Here, John.
Councillor Senoy Barr.
Here, John.
Councillor Tierney.
Here, John.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mayor.
Here now, John.
Thank you, Alderman President.
Chief Executive, can I give apologies on behalf of Councillor Cusack and Councillor Boyle, John Boyle?
Thank you.
John Michaela here. I'm just in the as well. Thank you.
Can I give you a call back later?
Thank you, Councillor Boyle.
Okay, thanks. Cheers, bye.
Thank you, members. And thank you, Alderman Ramsey. Got you as well there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, members. Okay, members, moving on now to agenda 3, a broadcast statement. I'd like to remind everyone who's remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live through the council YouTube channel and will be available for viewing in the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. The broadcast may be determined or suspended in accordance with council protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and use chat facilities to highlight the request to speak. By participating in this meeting, you're consenting being filmed and the use for storage and those images broadcast for training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historic records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the council privacy policy may be found on the council website. Member agenda 4, declaration of members' interest. If there is any members' interest, could you let me know now or highlight them throughout the meeting on the chat box? Members, agenda 5, chairperson's business. Members, as we remember last Friday's meeting, special council meeting, it was agreed to set up a hardship emergency fund working group. I'm now going to pass on to John to take us through that. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor, as you said at the last special council meeting on Friday, there was a resolution passed to establish a working group. It's proposed, members, that the first meeting of that working group takes place tomorrow morning. And therefore, we're seeking guidance from members today on the makeup of that working group. As you know, members, there are two models that the council currently utilises for the establishment of a working group. The first model is one from each party plus one member from each of the independents. And the other model that has been used on a number of occasions is that it's open to all members. So through you, Mayor, we're seeking some guidance today, a proposal from yourselves, members, as to which model you would prefer to utilise on this occasion to enable the first and initial meeting of the working group to take place tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Members, I see a proposal on the table from Councillor Gallagher that all members have a second there, and a second by, okay, Councillor Hargan. Okay, members.
Mayor,
I just-
just in the chat box to indicate that my intention to speak on this. I got the email out from council officers in relation
Go
to
ahead.
this. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, and Mayor, just I see it's been proposed now and seconded in the chat box, but the SDLP were happy to make that proposal today, that it should be opened up to all elected members, given the cost of living crisis is affecting people right across the city and district, and will have different implications for people in the different parts of the district that they represent. So, Mayor, we were happy to propose to open it up to everyone. Thank you.
No, happy enough. We have a proposal here and a seconder. And Councillor Ferguson happily support. Councillor Duffy happily support. Alderman Hussey.
Just quick clarification, if the proposal goes through, I presume meetings will be hybrid. Thank you.
The first meeting tomorrow morning, indeed, through you, Mayor, will be hybrid. We'll endeavour to get a WebEx appointment sent out before the end of the day, or worst case scenario, first thing in the morning.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Turley.
Mayor, thank you. And as Councillor Riley has obviously already outlined our party position, but due to other commitments that I have with constituents tomorrow morning, can I send an apology for the initial meeting? But we'll get an update from party colleagues, and we'll then join further meetings after that. Thank you.
Okay, members, they're proposing seconder. It appears to me I don't hear any sending voices on this one, so all members happy enough. They open up the all members, and tomorrow's meeting is 11:30. Happy enough, members. So, members, moving on, I'd like to welcome our special guest today and to discuss the findings of the Derry Trade Unions Council local working survey here. Understand Caroline's not able to attend today's meeting, and thoughts we were two kids, and I am going to open up the through standing orders. Normally what happens, I see Niall on there. It is 20 minutes, but Niall, source if we lower up to 10 minutes, and we're easy going in this here, so we do for each speaker and we'll get through. So Niall, I'd like to welcome you anyway, and I'd like to pass on to you now to take us through.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, well, not need 20 minutes anyway, Mayor, but so thanks, Chair. Niall McCarroll, Chairperson of Derry Trade Union Council. On behalf of local workers, working families, and indeed local trade union activists, I want to thank the Council and all those directly involved in organising today's event, particularly the excellent Council workers who have been engaging with the Trades Council in preparation for today's special Council meeting. Of course, today's special meeting of Council has been called following the findings of the Derry Trades Union Council Local Workers Survey. And I'm sure everyone will agree the survey findings do not make for easy reading. Chair, if it's okay, I'd like to give a quick background on Derry Trades Union Council in support of our position across City and District on behalf of the 15,000 local trade union members who are currently affiliated to Derry Trades Union Council through their various local trade union branches. DTUC was established in 1889, providing a vehicle for local workers' voices to be heard and supported in struggle. Our workers' charter calls for the right to organise and join a trade union, investment in workers' terms and conditions, the real living wage for every worker, no matter their age, a universal basic income, free childcare, rent controls, an end to the concentration of global private wealth, an expansion of public services, investment in the green energy industry, and an end to the arms trade. Derry Trades Union Council continue to model our existence on these principles, and we will continue to fight for local workers, supporting social justice campaigns and organising and mobilising towards working class unity. And I suppose before we hear from our speakers, Mayor, I want to encourage everyone to join Derry Trades Union Council during this year's May Day celebrations on Saturday, the 30th of April. And as we all know, there's a Workers' Rights Social Justice Week in the build-up to International Workers' Day, May Day. And it's only right that what's going on as regards the cost of living crisis, the lack of proper pay awards, local workers and local families have had enough. And we encourage everybody to use this year's May Day march and rally to come out and stand together and give a strong message, a message of a reckoning that what is going on just isn't sustainable, and it's about time that local people and working class communities are valued. So that's really all I have to say for opening remarks, Mayor. And I think Grace is going first. Grace Ward, the local hospitality worker. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Fred. Now, members, I'm going to pass first of all through all the speakers there first, and then we'll open up the members then. So, Grace, I'd like to welcome you to the meeting. Are you on there, okay, Grace?
Yeah.
Perfect. So there you are, Grace. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Grace Ward, and I would like to use this opportunity to present to Council my experiences as a local worker who has worked in the hospitality and tourism sector here in Derry City. To begin, I just want to say that the evidence I am presenting today is not in relation to my current job, but rather a similar job which I had before I changed jobs within the sector. Working in the hospitality and tourism sector, I was paid $4.62 an hour with no sick pay, protections, or holiday pay. I'm employed through a 0-hour contract with no guaranteed hours, being sent home from work by my boss early if the shift is late. So even though I have been offered an 8-hour shift, in many cases I only got paid for 5 or 6 hours. I make this presentation to Council today as an individual worker who other girls my age are also fed up working for basically nothing. Through our jobs, we believe that we contribute a lot to the image of the city, but we do not earn enough to make any real difference in our lives. As young workers, we believe that we are worth more than $8.62 an hour. When we are on our break at work, we hear our work colleagues also talking about how bad their pay is and how they are struggling to pay their bills. They use the term the working poor a lot. This is not what we thought getting a part-time job would mean. My friends and I want a future that is filled with hope, but our experiences of local work have been a cold reality check of the struggles of working people. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Grace. Niall, who's on next?
It doesn't really matter. I mean, if Saoirse's ready to go, she can indicate.
Saoirse, welcome to hear today's meeting. Do you want to go ahead? Is Cleona there from the retail sector workers? Maybe we'll get her on first.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Hi, welcome to the meeting. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no problem. Hello, my name is Cleona Collins and I have worked in several jobs in the local retail sector. Each of the jobs have paid me $4.62 an hour. I also want it known that I am not talking about my current job in this presentation. None of these jobs that I have worked in the retail sector made me feel valued. I did not feel part of any staff team, but rather someone who could be called upon at short notice. I felt uncomfortable and pressured to ask customers to buy more and spend more. These retail jobs never offered me guaranteed hours. If I was 5 minutes late, I would lose an hour's pay. There was never any proper staff facilities, with the break room being a store out the back. We also did not get paid for our breaks. The biggest issue for me and my friends who also have a part-time job is the amount we get paid. To get paid $4.62 an hour is really demoralising. I also have to get taxis to and from work, which is around a trip fare of £14. It takes me 3 hours at work to pay for my travel to and from work, with my shifts being on average between 7 and 9 hours long. Me and my friends just see how busy the shops be, and that especially around Christmas time, yet we only get paid $4.62 an hour. Recent news is about the cost of living crisis gripping the people of Derry. Families in Derry are struggling, working people are suffering. The young people of Derry need help. We need a pay rise. We feel we are worth more than $4.62 an hour. Young workers like me feel exploited. Why can we not earn the top minimum wage hourly rate of $8.91? We just work as hard as someone aged 22. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that and well done. Okay, our final speaker, Saoirse from the community sector workers.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Saoirse Fanning, Unison Member and Derry Trade Union Council Delegate. Reading and analysing the local workers survey, many findings are alarming and without doubt will impact negatively on local workers. The survey questions around COVID-19 are particularly concerning. I would like to focus on the COVID-19 related findings. When surveyed, 67% of local workers did not have company sick pay. Half of the 368 workers who responded said they did not feel safe going to work. 25% says they could not self-isolate, with 65% saying they could simply not afford to do so. 55% of those surveyed have experienced bullying and/or harassment in the workplace. COVID-19 has significantly impacted the community and voluntary sector, where workers have worked tirelessly to support the emergency response to COVID-19 and provide care and support to some of the most vulnerable people in society. Within supported living accommodation, care facilities, homeless projects, the women's sector and community groups. As well as working in the front line ourselves, we as trade unions have been fighting for our members to get paid in full when off sick with COVID-19 or having to isolate due to the close contact tracing. Some employers are only paying statutory sick pay, even though money was available from the Department of Communities to pay staff in full. Even though those employers that pay statutory sick pay, the frontline staff are paying enhanced terms and conditions to office staff and senior management working from home. The lack of full pay while off work due to COVID-19 has left some workers with no option but to use food banks to survive. These are the same workers that support the most vulnerable within this city and district. With the Derry Trade Union Council Workers Survey, finding that 25% of those surveyed have had to use food banks. Organisations where we have recognition agreements in place have been a lot better at supporting their workers, and we have negotiated full pay for COVID-19 absences on behalf of our members. Many community sector workers are registered with the Northern Ireland Social Care Council. We are doing the exact same jobs as our colleagues employed by the Department of Health, except the services we work in have been outsourced and privatised, and the frontline staff are on poverty pay and poor terms and conditions. The privatisation of public services, such as care for people with learning difficulties, has resulted in unregulated manipulation of public money. There is no scrutiny or regulations around salary scales. No one in the relevant government departments is challenging how senior management can earn six-figure salaries and frontline essential workers are on minimum wage. Now more than ever, social clause must be built into all public contracts outsourced to the community sector. The recent information on CEO pay within community-based charitable organisations makes for disturbing reading, especially for those of us who represent frontline workers in the very same charities, workers who make difficult choices to make ends meet. The allocation of public money should not lead to well-paid jobs for some and hardship for others. This is wrong and unsustainable. The work we do in the community multi-sector is invaluable. We as workers know this, but when the relevant departments and the employers won't recognise this and ensure we are treated fairly, paid a decent day's pay for a decent day's work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Niall, do you want to close the door? Are you happy enough?
No, I'm happy enough, Mayor. If there's any questions from councillors around the survey and any of the presentations, just sort of that might be the best way to proceed, Mayor.
Appreciate that. First of all, I'd just like to say well done to all the speakers there. And I'm now going to open up the floor. I see now in the chat box there are a few members looking to come in. So, Councillor Donnelly.
Chair, thank you. Chair, look, I know you did say about proposals and that, but and about questions in a message you got, or sorry, email I got yesterday. Which I think it's important that that what we hear what people have to say first. And some of the stuff that we just heard there is shocking. The way these young people are treated, and sometimes politicians think that they have all the answers, and they very rarely do. So my question, I would like to thank the speakers here and the trade unionists, but I would ask a question: is there anything that they think that council can be doing? What would they like to see council doing in order to put this type of situation, get rid of it? What is any of the speakers here something that they would like to recommend that we should be doing? Thank you.
Hi, Grace.
Go ahead, Chris.
I believe we should all be paid the same rate as pay, as we are all doing the same job. I feel because of my age, they feel I don't work as hard and don't deserve to be paid as much as someone who is older, when we all just do the same job and we all work as hard.
Thank you for that, Chris. Any other speakers want to come on?
Hi, it's Kleina.
Go ahead, Kleina.
Me and my friends were just talking about how we don't feel valued working either, and it would be nice to just be supported by the council, and it'd be great if the council could do some further work, even by producing a report regarding the pay rate over the city and district even.
Thank you, Kleina. Niall?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think most of us, Mayor, would agree with the fact that every weekend in Derry it's impossible to get a hotel room. Cafes and restaurants are booked out. That sort of boom certainly wouldn't be reflected in working class areas that you personally and other councillors and indeed the trade union movement represent and provide a lot of advice and guidance for. So there seems to be a big boom within the business chamber, and a small group of people are doing really well in an area that is a lot of deprivation and neglect from various governments. And I think it can't be the case that Derry progresses on the back of local workers getting paid just over £4 an hour. I mean, Kleina used the word exploitation. I mean, no other word describes that any better. And what we find as a trade union is a lot of these service industries, cafes, restaurants, pubs, you know, years ago you would have seen a barman, you know, he would have been middle-aged and whatever, but now you've got young people who are doing a very good job, who are 16, 17 years of age, doing a very good job. And as Grace said, helping to improve the image of the city, to try and, you know, encourage investment. But we can't have the situation where local workers are getting paid over £4 an hour, don't have any sickness guaranteed hours. That council needs, or should, as a follow-up to this, should look at the wage inequalities that are there, and look at ways of reaching out to those. Some of these organisations are multinational corporations, and they're making millions, but yet they say they can't pay workers in their shops any more than $4.62 an hour. So I think there needs to be a bit of work done, a bit of a scoping exercise possibly around the wage structures in this city, and you know, where they can be improved. I think council should encourage, along with the trade unions, should encourage those to do so.
Thank you. Saoirse?
Thank you, Mayor. Specifically in the community and voluntary sector, there needs to be more stipulation on the funding. The funding's given out supporting people, fund 82 providers within the community and voluntary sector, and there's no stipulation in the funding of what the staff should be paid, or should they be getting sick pay or better terms and conditions. There is a recommendation that it should be band 3 salaries and terms and conditions in line with Agenda for Change and within the trust, but that's only a recommendation, and the employers don't have to listen to that, and very few, if any, of the employers actually do. So there is a lot of manipulation of the public funding, and there is, I think it's around 82 million that go to supporting people every year, and the frontline staff aren't seeing that. For example, there's a large organisation within the city and district that are refusing to give a 1.75% pay rise to their lowest paid majority female staff, because they're now being brought up to £9.50 an hour, the minimum wage. So they're using the excuse that because in their eyes they're already getting a pay rise, but it's not a pay rise, it's the legal requirement of minimum wage. So it's having a detrimental effect, and it's also having an effect on retention and recruitment of staff within health and social care in the community sector, and that's having a knock-on effect on the clients and the service users that we provide a service for. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers. They are Councillor Donnelly. Members, will you pass on now to Councillor Hargan?
Mayor, I appreciate that you're putting me forward there, but there might have been a few speakers ahead of me, so just so that I'm not putting them out, if you want to go by order.
No, I don't see any speakers there. I think you're up next on the list there, Councillor Hargan.
Okay. Well, if I did put anybody out, I will put that on the Mayor. First of all, but thank you. I want to thank the Derry Trade Union Council and all the contributors today who have taken time out of work to come here and make these presentations. And I think that the actual survey itself is stunning in terms of the findings of it. And I think that is why it's right that we are having this meeting today to discuss with workers themselves those findings. And there's just a few of them that I think really jump out. I mean, look, I just think it is a disgrace that anybody is being paid in this city, in this district, less than £5 an hour. And I don't care what age they are, you should be getting paid the minimum wage rate that is the basic floorboard for wages, and that should be a minimum, not not an end. And I think we should be demanding a lot more. I think that the survey finds 25% of workers using food banks, and we all know that there is a huge escalation in the number of workers using food banks, and that is also a disgrace, in my opinion. The people who are going out to work are also now dependent on food banks. 73% of people struggling to pay their bills. I mean, that doesn't surprise us, but that is shocking. and that should shock the council into action on behalf of the workers in this district and the least well off. And then one thing I want to mention is that the 45% of workers who've experienced bullying. Now, the reason why I want to mention that one is because it's not easy for workers to publicly join a meeting like this, right? Because they have to go back into work next week, and they're here now, opening up about their experience at work. And it is quite common, especially in non-unionized workplaces, that workers will get, unfortunately, sometimes targeted for speaking out. That's why trade union protection is so important. And I think that's so. Again, I just want to commend those workers who've been willing to participate in this, because it's not easy, and I certainly don't take it for granted. So just on trade union representation, look, I know everybody will speak with empathy and sympathy today about what workers fit in this district, but Stormont last week had an opportunity to pass trade union legislation that would have actually made it easier for workers in this city and district to join a trade union. And unfortunately, the DUP, UUP and Alliance all decided to vote down that legislation that was backed by the Trades Council, backed by NICTU, and backed by many trade unions who were part of shaping the content of that bill. And I just think that that's disgraceful. That was an opportunity to help workers in this district join a trade union. The second thing is Stormont now, out of the new Decade New Approach agreement, has the ability to take control of setting the minimum wage rates. And as we have called on the executive to take that action, but the executive has not made a priority of this. So we could have been in a situation now where we were setting our own minimum wage rates and abolishing young people getting paid, getting exploited and paid for something an hour when they should be getting paid a full rate. So these are tangible things that could have been done over the last year, but have not been done because political parties made a decision that they're not priorities. And that is why you find the survey has these types of findings, because this hasn't been a priority. So, I will formally propose that we agree to the proposals that have come from a few of the speakers, a few of the presenters, which is that the council should initiate some research to get a proper picture of pay scales across the hospitality sector, the retail sector, and the community sector. I think that those are things that the council can actually do, and that'll help to get us a very visible picture of what workers in different in different workplaces across the city and district are facing. But again, I just want to thank everybody for coming in and speaking, because this is a huge we had a rally today of education welfare officers here demanding pay parity, basic pay parity. Our council workers, as we know, are going on strike on Monday. TransLink workers right now here in this district are going to be balloting for a decent pay raise. We see teachers rejecting their disgraceful pay offer. We've seen a situation where Stormont went along with the Tory plan to impose a pay cut on health and social care workers after 2 years of the pandemic. That's their reward. So look, I think a lot can be done, and we have to use the council as an echo chamber for workers' rights, and I think that the council can be doing more to encourage and insist that employers across the district, especially big corporations that can afford it, should actually be paying all their workers at least the minimum wage, not
Okay, member, could you bring your remarks to a close, please? Thank you. Okay, members. Obviously, we all seen the email yesterday, and I'm content about that. But I would like that there to come through to a full council meeting, and the full council meeting will be on the 31st of March. I'm happy enough to take that, Councillor Hargan. So I'm not going to bring it today, but if you would be happy enough to put that as a motion in full council, we'd be happy enough, or I'd be happy enough to take that forward. Thank you. Okay, members, moving on to Councillor Riley.
Okay, Mayor, thanks for bringing me in, and thanks to Niall and to Grace and Cleona as well for their presentations. I suppose I have a few questions just on the presentations, just for my own benefit in terms of the stats and the information behind it. So probably to you, Niall, I suppose in terms of that, it indicates that in terms of the survey responses, overwhelmingly out of the 368 responses, it's female that have answered. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the methodology behind that, is there any additional information you can give as to, about a third of the responses are male, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that needs to be addressed there in relation to the responses. And obviously, the three ladies that have spoken so well about their experiences. Part of what the various different questions in the survey have touched on or is quite wide ranging, which is very, very beneficial. But I'm also wondering, and this wasn't picked up on the appendix that was sent out for the meeting. So maybe the people who took part in the survey have these questions already answered, and if not, maybe Grace or Cleona or Saoirse could give an outline as to the impact of things like bereavement leave. I know that back a number of months ago, Councillor Harkin tabled a motion which was supported in relation to improving bereavement leave for people who experience a bereavement, because not every employer provides that type of statutory care to their employee when a bereavement occurs. So I'm just wondering if that's something that the three ladies have experienced themselves, or if it's something that is a pressure within the system that their colleagues have highlighted. And associated with that, and I suppose this goes back to my first point about the gender makeup of the survey, in relation to the young women that have spoken about their experiences, we know that as they go on in their lives in relation to their employment, there will be other pressures faced at them. The SDLP MLA Sinead McLaughlin had a survey running a number of weeks, and the outcomes of that were published this week in relation to childcare costs and the impact that has on a person's pay progression and their ability to work. And I'm wondering if the three ladies that presented, if they have any additional information or additional thoughts on the impact of childcare on their colleagues, or in relation to them leaving employment or having to change jobs because of the different entitlements that employers would offer. So there are a couple of questions, Mayor, directly to either Niall or the three ladies who presented, but to close just by thanking them for their presentations here this afternoon, and that information is very useful. I hear what you said about Councillor Harkin making a proposal, and Mayor, you're indicating you want to hold that to full council, but I do think that it would be useful that whenever we come to debate it, either today or next week when full council arrives, I think it is something that certainly the SDLP would be supportive of. And I do come back to the very opening comments by Niall in relation to the event on May Day. I do think that the council should be fully supportive of that, as we have in the past. And certainly this report should shape what council is doing in that Workers' Rights and Social Justice Week. Thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks again to the presentations that we've received.
Thank you for that, Councillor Riley. Speakers, so there are a couple of questions there surrounding bereavement and childcare. Niall, do you want to, or any other speakers?
Don't know if Saoirse wants to talk about the bereavement leave and the childcare matters. I'm quite happy to let Saoirse talk about that.
Yeah, I'll come on and talk about that. So within the Unison Community Branch, where I would be the branch secretary, the majority of our members would be female, and that would be across health and social care and community. The majority of workers would be female. And I know that we would have challenges within employers of getting flexible working requests and family working requests for our members, which makes it very difficult for them because they work on sociable hours. So getting not just the cost of childminding, but also the hours that they need their children looked after can be very challenging. It is better in organisations where we have recognition agreements because we negotiate with the employers around flexible working and family friendly working requests and the effect that it does have on the workers. But in anti-trade union employers, it's very difficult and it does have an impact. And even for the workers to ask for their hours to be reduced to part-time hours, that can be refused as well on quite a number of occasions. So a lot of the time, the workers and our members have no choice but to leave their employment and to seek different employment where the hours aren't as long and aren't as unsociable. In regard to the bereavement leave, we would have, in any organisation that we have recognition, there would be policies around statutory bereavement leave, and they're going to work towards the legislation that's coming on about leave for if somebody has a miscarriage or before 24 weeks. So they are working towards implementing that legislation and policies within the workplace, but that's not across all community and voluntary sector workplaces. But it definitely has childcare and the cost of childcare and the lack of flexibility with employers. It costs our members significantly, so it does. And the fact that their salaries and their hourly rates don't pay enough for them to pay childcare as well, it definitely has a negative impact on them.
And I suppose if just on Martin's question about the survey, I mean, we did spend a lot of time, Martin, and trying to get the questions right and trying to make it reflective and holistic in terms of its outcomes. So, you know, we're happy enough that we did reach as many people as possible. And obviously by the findings of it, nearly 70% of the workers who returned the survey were female and the rest were male. But that might reflect the local employment market more than anything else. And maybe male workers are, you know, in many cases, depending on the work they do, are working away from home. But we did try and, you know, reflect the different sectors and the different contracts people were on, and trying to highlight, you know, as I said in my opening paragraph, provide a voice for local workers. And, you know, I think it's, you know, it's time that, you know, it's well documented that the council works really well with the business community, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I would just, you know, in terms of moving forward, you know, the question needs to be asked along with many other questions. I mean, has it ever been put to the local chamber and, you know, others that have a collective unity of purpose? What is the weight structures within the various organisations that these groups represent? And I think it's about time that we started to reverse the years of wage inequality and hardships, which seem to be created through, you know, very much profit-driven local employment practices. And I think this survey has certainly highlighted and give workers a platform and a voice to provide the council about what's going on within the various places of work. And, you know, when it comes to sort of telling us what's best for local people and what we need to improve and advance, like other cities, local business leaders, the council and other departments regularly bestow upon us, you know, their unquestionable expertise around this. Well, our survey would clearly indicate that this expertise and this model of doing things isn't to the benefit of local workers, and something needs done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other speakers want on there?
Mayor, I'm in the chat box. I don't know.
I know you are. I'm just giving the speakers the answer that question, Councillor Riley. So thank you, speakers. Okay, Councillor Duffy, next and last, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought you meant members, so apologies for that. Thank you to the Derry Trade Union Council, and thank you, Niall, Saoirse, Grace and Cliona, for the really informative presentations. And thanks as well for sending us out the findings of the survey in advance. I I went through them last night and I found them really interesting. Probably some of them quite stark in terms of the findings. I think it was important today that we did hear from Grace and Cluna as young people and how insecure work and low pay and part-time contracts are having a negative effect on them, and that is something that we need to really take account of as we move forward. Sinn Féin, I suppose we have a positive track record in standing up for workers' rights and working with the trade unions, and where we have had the ability within the Assembly and within the Executive, we have worked to bring forward progressive workers' rights legislation. And I suppose an example of that is in relation to Conor Murphy bringing forward legislation around government contracts and that they need to be paying the real living wage. We talked about childcare there, and I know Deirdre had brought forward legislation around upfront childcare payments for people so that it doesn't become a barrier for people getting into work. I know we also have a number of private members' bills that have gone forward around 0 hours contract, the Bereavement Leave bill, and Padraig Delargy, MLA here in the city. He is also bringing forward the positive work-life balance bill. So there is work going on now. There is much more work to be done, and I know Councillor Harkin outlined some of it there, but it's about ensuring that you do have the political will. And I think Sinn Féin as a party, where we have had the ability, where we have had ministers, we have certainly tried to bring forward as progressive legislation as possible in terms of workers' rights and terms and conditions and everything that workers need to feel valued and to feel safe in the workplace. So I would just say, in terms of yourselves, Niall, and I know you a long time, keep up the good work in terms of what you are doing. You will have our continued support around working for workers' rights. So thank you for the presentation today, and thank you for the opportunity of sharing some of the experiences that you have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duffy. I didn't pick up a question on that. So members, Councillor McKenna.
Sorry, Mayor, having some technical issues there. I really have a question for Niall. And thank you, Niall, again, and thank you to your colleagues for speaking as well. We have a major problem well, throughout the UK and Ireland, actually, and it's really what I would call the black market in wages, where companies will pay people cash in hand to do jobs and therefore are able to keep the wage down. How would you, just as a matter of just how would do it going forward, would you propose to tackle this? You know, because I can't see it's going to be hard to increase wages when people are prepared to go under the counter and pay people money. And they're also not covered, you know, things like insurance and tax, national insurance and all. And I'm sure you're well aware of it now within the industry. I know it's really quite rife within the transport industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKenna. Niall?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Well, I mean, one of the issues that workers have at the minute is that they don't have the level of influence and power that they did have in the 70s, when, you know, everybody was paid decent wages and at decent terms and conditions. Over time, those terms and conditions have been attacked by various Conservative governments and indeed British Labour Party governments, and we see legislation north and south of the border that is anti-trade union and certainly doesn't support working families. So the first thing in terms of doing away with the black market and the need for it, and the need for people, some people to think that, well, the only way to survive is by beating the system and going against it, would be to support such legislation as the Trade Union Freedom Bill. That will be a good step forward in terms of addressing the issue that you raise, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers want to come on it? Happy enough? Happy enough now?
Yeah, sure.
Apologies, Alderman Hussey. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Niall, Saoirse, Grace, and Leona for your contributions. When Councillor Harkin first brought this survey to the attention of Council, I asked about the survey because, and I was told that the survey was available to everyone in the newspapers. Well, I presume he meant the Derry newspapers, which I'm well beyond the city now, and I don't get. So I'm grateful that we've received a copy of the actual survey. In your presentation, you talked in terms of 15,000 members. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm surprised that we were only looking at 368 responses, just about 2% of your membership. Was the survey a targeted survey rather than a full membership survey? Would be the first one to yourself, Niall. Moving on then to Saoirse, Grace, and Leona. With regard to the community and voluntary sector, I suppose to you, Saoirse, would you see rationale in that there may be a need to actually mainstream the majority of services that are currently being delivered through the community and voluntary sector? Grace and Leona, I was really shocked at some of the stuff you were saying there about how young workers are treated. I've been in the hospitality business since 1992. I mean, the figures that you're quoting, I wouldn't have got away with that back when I first started in the business. So I find it absolutely shocking that colleagues would be treating young workers like yourselves in such a fashion. I think it's an absolute disgrace. At the weekend, I had an event and I had to bring in part-time workers. I can assure you, I had to pay well over the minimum wage in order to actually get folk to work. At the beginning of my business in 92, had 16, 17 full-time, part-time workers. That business is gone now compared to what it used to be. And it's just myself, my wife, and a couple of family members who actually keep the business going. So when we get a big event, we have to bring in part-time. We can't keep people employed all the time. And I certainly think that the ask, I think it was, it might have been Leona who said, you know, $8.91 an hour would be an ask. I would say that's a low ask for the work that can be given whenever staff are in. The staff I had in, you know, were from your age, they're 16, 17, right through to an 80-year-old lady who was giving a hand. And they were all paid the same because, as you say, they're doing the same work. Certainly, there might be more experience with some of the staff, and but at the same time, experience is gained by being in the job. So, you know, I don't have the slightest objection to what you're saying there about a potential wage that needs to be paid. Thank you for the contributions. So I suppose there are really two questions on there: reference to survey, Niall, and Saoirse reference. Is there a need to actually mainstream a lot of these services and take them out of the hands of the community voluntary sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Fred Alderman Hussey. And Niall?
Does Saoirse want to go first, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe personally that it should all be brought back under public ownership. The outsourcing and privatisation of these services has been a detriment to the workers for years, and it is costing more money to the government. This is government funding that's going to private organisations. They may be not for profit, but there's certainly people at the top of these organisations earning six-figure salaries while the frontline staff are on minimum wage. And I genuinely believe they should be brought back into public ownership, all the services, and that the staff then will be paid appropriately for the work they're doing and have good terms and conditions. And that will benefit. There will be less staff leaving, the retention of staff will be better, and that will reflect in the continuity of care for the service users and clients that we are working with.
Thank you for that, Saoirse. Now,
Yeah, I suppose, and thanks for your question, Greg. I mean, I suppose there's, in terms of bringing, and go back to Councillor Duffy's contributions earlier on about the Finance Minister making recommendations that all public funding workers should get at least the living wage, and we welcome that announcement. But it needs to go further. You know, there needs to be a cap on CEO pay. There needs to be sickness protections for all workers, and there needs to be built-in easy access to family-friendly working requirements and flexible working requests. There's so many things. I mean, it's obviously what people get home with them in their pay is important, but there's also other things that we believe that the political classes should be more proactive around it. And suppose in terms of this specific question around the amount of people who reply to the survey, I think that's reflective across society as a whole. There's a lack of apathy, or there's a lot of apathy. Sorry, and you know, even when it comes to people taking part in the electoral process, I don't know how many votes it takes now for a councillor to get elected, but that has fallen. I don't know how many people actually are within the Castleberg ward that you represent in terms of the entire population, but it's something that has crept in to society that people are think, well, what's the point taking part in this? What's the point doing this? Because there doesn't seem to be any change within the political establishment, and people are getting fed up. And that's the reason why we've done this survey. Now, obviously, we would have liked a lot more people to take part in it, but I think the findings that have come back can't be discounted, and they certainly need follow-up action. Thank you, Mayor.
thank you, Saoirse. Thank you, Niall, and also thank you, Alderman Halsey, for that question. Okay, members, Alderman McClintock.
Thanks, Mayor, for letting me in. And can I first of all say thanks to Grace, Saoirse, Fiona and Niall for the presentation. It was very, very informative, as well as being quite shocking. I mean, what's happening to these young people really is exploitation. And to think that someone has to work for 3 hours even to pay their travel and not even to have guaranteed hours at the end of that, I think that is quite shocking. And I think that really is exploitation. And I think that the question for me, probably the most important question asked here today actually was from the very first councillor who spoke, and he said, what can we do? Because so aware that as a council, we can't force people to actually increase the wages for their employees. But what we have to do, that's not in any way saying that we should do nothing. What we have to do is be more informed and see what we can do about it. I mean, there are good employers out there, some of them small employers who do pay above the minimum wage, even to their very young people. And I think we can't sort of target them all, but obviously what we've heard today is quite shocking. And I do look forward to this coming before us as a notice of motion at the end of the month to discuss it further, because I think it is important that we do see a way forward to support our workers, and particularly today listen to our very young workers. So there's no real question here. I mean, I think we have to just see how we can actually make requests, more than requests, how we can make demands for better wages, for minimum wages for all our residents, and not only the wages but the benefits that come with them, not only the benefits but the rights that come with them. So thank you for coming to do the presentation today. I don't have a question at the end of this. Thank you very much.
Can I just follow on? Chair, can I just come in there to follow on just and from what Councillor McClintock, Holly was saying there? I mean, one of the things, Holly, that we were sort of recommending just quickly on the back of the survey was that, you know, local cafes and restaurants and hotels and shops should make it known on their menus or on their front doors how much they pay their staff.
Niall, I've lost that.
And I know for one, if I knew...
Niall, can you turn your video off and start again there? Because we just lost you when you started speaking there. Is that okay? I just heard about cafes and menus or something there. Could you start again? Even if you turn your video, it might work a bit better there, okay?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. No, I was just saying there on the back of Councillor McClintock's contribution that one of the things that we were calling for in terms of moving forward is that local cafes and restaurants and hotels and other service outlets should, have their pay rates listed on their menus and on the front door. And I think I certainly would welcome that if I knew that the employees in a particular cafe or restaurant were getting paid £10 an hour, that's where I want to spend my money. I think that's what needs to happen. Call out these bad employers. And as you say, Hilary, there are some good employers, but you can't call an employer a good employer if they're paying staff $4.62 an hour, and halfway through the shift, just because it's quiet, they send that person home and they don't pay them for the shift that they were originally asked to complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Niall. Councillor Rachel Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the speakers. I really appreciate the presentation and the survey. Obviously, I've come from a background of retail and hospitality. I worked in it for over 15 years, so a lot of stuff that were brought forward, I'm only too aware of. And I must declare I am a member of CWE union. Now, I have a question around your survey, and it's just interesting the correlation between question 10 and question 11. Have you experienced bullying or harassment in the workplace? 45% of people said yes, and then following that, you have, are you a trade union member? And 45% of people are saying no. I wanted to know whether or not you think that there's links to that not being a trade union. Maybe they didn't feel like they had someone to back them up. I know the union I was part of has always been very proactive with retail workers. And then the other one is, I know you mentioned the bill and it is disappointing. We Alliance have a record of supporting trade unions, even going far back as, Stephen Farry being the minister and blocking the Trade Union Act in 2015. We had a number of concerns and we're hoping to work through with the Department of Economy, and Employment Relations and Rates bills. But there was a query, and I wanted to get your view on it, about the removal of the postal votes, and obviously people being coerced, maybe in person, and I wanted to see whether or not that was something you'd heard or raised before. But first and foremost, I wanted to know the correlation between those two, because I do understand, coming from retail, that there can be bullying and harassment, and whether or not there's a correlation to not being a part of the trade union on that, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I don't know if Saoirse wants to address the one about bullying and trade union membership. I'm quite happy to come in and talk about the Trade Union Freedom Bill if Saoirse wants to answer that, or I can, no problem.
I know, that's grand, I'll come in. Thank you for the question, Rachel. In regard to that, there's a lot of anti-trade union employers out there, and workers are terrified to join trade unions. They are told from the day in hour that they start, we don't recognise trade unions. They're threatened that they'll lose their jobs if they join trade unions, and it's across not just the community involved sector, but it's across the sectors that we would see very anti-trade union employers, and that does reflect in people. If you're told that you're going to lose your job if you join a trade union or become active, people make the decision not to join because they are genuinely scared, and that would come across to them as bullying and harassment. And I think that reflects in the survey, the findings that came out in the survey regarding that, and that's something that we see across different unions about trade union victimisation. Speaking up and being active in a trade union certainly doesn't do anything for your career or trying to improve your career or get promotions. Thank you.
So just in terms of I think maybe in the first or second part of your question, Councillor Ferguson, I think it's important that this survey, we don't sort of fall out with one another about the way our particular groups or parties voted and or have responded to workers' issues and stuff. But I think it would be fair to say that the wider trade union movement and the ordinary worker was definitely disappointed that the Trade Union Freedom Bill was not passed in Stormont. It would have been a game changer for workers. And this myth, that was started off from Margaret Thatcher, that unions were bullying their own members into voting in a certain way. This was all, the conspiracy and the message at the time that we needed to change trade unions. But isn't it pretty telling that from the time this legislation that came in and the attacks on the trade unions came in, that workers' rights, people's take-home pay, people's quality of life, cost of living have all skyrocketed at the same time as the boss's pay has risen as well. So there's a clear correlation to both. And maybe sometime, I'm quite open to meeting with yourself and anybody from the Alliance to find out what exactly the Alliance Party's concerns were with in relation to the Trade Union Freedom Bill, because from reading it, those of us that were heavily involved in it and supporting it, we viewed that as a very positive piece of legislation on and in support of the other legislation that Councillor Luffley referred to around zero-hour contracts and the ministerial interventions and the flexible working policy that MLA Padraig Delargy is working on. So there's a lot of work there, but the Trade Union Freedom Bill would have certainly strengthened all those other individual bills that are coming before the Stormont Assembly. But as I say, more than happy to set up a meeting to be interesting to know what your concerns were around that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatna. Thank you, Saoirse. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Okay, members. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor, and apologies for being late, as I was just finished work myself there. But the research that you have shared beforehand is really, really excellent, and the discussion has been excellent as well. So thank you so much to Grace and Saoirse, Fiona and Niall for giving us this opportunity for you to really shine a light on the exploitation of workers here and the difficulties and challenges facing workers here, and particularly young workers as well. And I there has been discussion around the anti-trade union laws from Thatcher, and I think that we don't that really put a real dent in the trade union movement, and I think that movement is starting to grow again thanks to all of your excellent work and building that trade union and building that culture of trade unionism to be a force of change for workers and for society as well as a whole. And I have a declaration of interest as a member of the Chartered Society of Physio. I'm a trade union member, and I really value all the work that you do. And I just wanted to touch on a big proportion of women answered your survey and the challenges that women in particular face in the workplace around the gender pay gap, which is very obvious, but also in terms of more precarious contracts, and women are often the main workforce when it comes to care. I think maybe over 70% of the NHS is staffed by women, but as well as care jobs being underpaid as a whole, women are also disproportionately impacted by the burden of care in the home as well. And I think we've touched on flexible working, and I think that's a really important issue. I know here in the Trust, it's something that's very that often comes up within the trade union movement here, around the ability for workers to work flexibly. So I was just wondering if you had any more thoughts on that, particularly given what we've seen a lot here is people leaving their full-time contracted jobs with excellent terms and with really excellent terms and conditions and trade union representation to work for agencies and locums, because then they have more control over the hours they work, and then they can be more flexible work. So it's very interesting that people are giving up those hard fought for terms and conditions, and just because they need to have that flexible working ability. And just the last point I wanted to touch on, I think it's really important that we grow the trade union movement, and particularly in the face of the climate crisis. One of the big asks in the climate crisis, and one of the things that was included within the climate change bill is dormant was around a just transition, and that's a really important point, so that like no worker is left behind as we transition away from fossil fuels and as we transition away from a carbon heavy society, but trade union representation within that just transition is essential, so that workers are reskilled, retrained, and are brought along in the transition we need in the face of the climate crisis. So just if you had any thoughts on that, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Speakers, now, Saoirse, Clona and Grace. Anybody want to come in? There's a number. I got a number of questions here on obviously the pay gap.
Don't know if Saoirse wants to talk about female care workers, maybe.
Sorry, I missed what Maeve says. My signal had cut out. Could you ask the question again, Maeve? Sorry.
Saoirse, it was around obviously the gender pay gap I was picking up.
Was there something that was asked about flexible working as well? I heard.
Yeah, it was about challenges women face in the workplace, and how, particularly like around flexible working as well, and how people are leaving their permanent contracted jobs to like work for agencies and locums because they have more flexibility over the hours that they work, and those different challenges that women face.
Yeah, and that is very prevalent across, and I'm sure it's the same in the trust and the community, as it would be in the community and voluntary sector, that we would see people joining agencies because of that. And there needs to be, within public funding organisations supporting people, for example, there needs to be stipulations within the funding that there's proper policies and procedures within the workplace for family-friendly working policies and flexible working requests as well, because it has a detrimental effect on the workforce and also our clients when there is a lot of agency staff coming on, and staff that have worked there for years leaving because of they can't get the hours that they need to provide for their family or look after their children. So it does have a detrimental impact, but there is ways and means that proper policies can be put in place to ensure that the workers are getting treated fairly and that they're being listened to around their concerns. And it has an impact on the amount that the organisations are having to pay out to agencies. They're paying extortionate prices to agencies. For example, some agencies are charging £21 an hour per worker plus the rate for the agency on top of that. But these organisations are paying their own staff minimum wage. And that is due to a lot of the fact is that staff are genuinely leaving because they can't get reduced hours or flexible working because the employer is automatically saying no, or we would hear a lot, it doesn't suit the organisation. Those hours won't suit the organisation. The hours that you're looking to work is going to have a detrimental impact on your job. But they're not realising that if you have no other option, if there is no flexibility, that they have to leave. And then we see sometimes the same people join the agency and coming back into the workplace. And I don't blame them. They have more flexibility. They're earning more money working for an agency as well. And that it definitely is causing a problem across the community and voluntary sector. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Saoirse. Any other speakers want to come in? Aye. Okay, members, I see no further speakers, and I would like to thank you today. I'd like to thank Niall and Saoirse, and I would like to especially thank Cleona and Grace. Obviously, them young voices are paramount here, and I look forward to see the motion brought in full and the full council now on the 31st of March, so we can obviously continue to discuss this very important thing. And it is heartbreaking to hear obviously the pay scales put out there, especially for young people. And I agree, and I'm sure every other member would agree on that. But members, I would like to thank you all today for coming along to the special council meeting and wish you all the best. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.